snack. Me and you gonna have a little chat about books. Hi guys, so I am here today to do a book review, and the book that I'm here to review is Rise of Empire, which is the third and fourth volumes of the Riyria Revelations series, which is by Michael J. Sullivan. This bind-up includes MELENGAR Rising, which is the third book, and The Emerald Storm, which is the fourth. I did this as a buddy read with a load of people, and I will link all of their channels down below so you guys can go and check them out because they're all wonderful and I love them all, and it was such a great time being able to talk to everyone about this book and get to know what everyone was thinking. So definitely check out the box below to see their channels and subscribe to them because they're all wonderful. Talking about the first book in this bind-up, MELENGAR Rising, I really enjoyed it. I flew through it in a couple of hours, in fact, even though it's like 300-ish pages. I flew through it in about maybe 5 hours, something like that, I don't know. But it wasn't a very long read. It's definitely one thing I love about these books is that it's so readable, it's so easy to get through. It doesn't even feel like you're reading when you're reading these books, it just feels like fun and enjoyable and light-hearted, and it's just a nice read. I really enjoyed it. This story once again is following the lives of Hadrian and Royce, and it continues 6 months after the ending of book number 2. We see that not only have they changed a bit as characters, but there is actually an empire which is being formed now. The politics of the world is all starting to change and things are really starting to get shaken up. The empire is a kind of facade which is all based around an empress who we met in book number 2. And it's kind of a facade. They just want to have someone to put on the throne, and then realistically it's like the priests and the higher nobles who are actually controlling what's going on. The empress herself doesn't really have any control over anything, and it's all a kind of facade and farce that they're putting on. Medina is a shadow of her former self. She is the empress, she's the one that they have put on the throne, and she's a very scared, broken girl. She's not your usual kind of ruler, she's not your usual suspect for a ruler, and the circumstances which kind of put her on the throne and which surround her situation are mostly explained in book number 2, so I won't give that away, but we know who she is and we have met her before, but she is now the Empress in this book. Politically, MELENGAR Rising was way more about tactics than book number 2. There's definitely more political manoeuvring that takes place in this book and the fourth one because the Empire is trying to take over everything and trying to play everyone off against each other to be able to rule. We get to see a few glimpses at various different plots and various different people. Essentially, it is mainly the Empire versus MELENGAR, which is where the king is based, and the king is one of the characters who we have followed in a previous book, him and his sister, who is the princess. We have followed their characters before, so we are kind of on the side of MELENGAR, but equally there are kind of pros and cons to both of them, and we get to see a bit more of that in this book, but it's more hints and glimpses than real in-depth discussion of the political manoeuvring. So if you're not into politics, that's not a big deal, because even though there is political manoeuvring going on behind the scenes, it's not the main point of this book. The main point of this book is definitely an adventure with Hadrian and Royce. And speaking of Hadrian and Royce, they are just as enchanting as ever. Their banter between the two of them is enjoyable, and we get to see their relationship a little bit tested in this one because of the situation where Royce tells Hadrian a secret that he has discovered. Hadrian begins this story in a bit of a mood, but we slowly get to find out why that is and what he's thinking about. Whilst Royce has been keeping this secret, their relationship has been a little bit strained, and after Royce tells Hadrian the secret, it's a little bit strained, so they have to kind of be a bit tested, and this is the first time where we've really seen their relationship put to a test, and whether or not they'll survive it is kind of the question of this book. Whilst Royce and Hadrian's characters are very similar to the previous books, we get a fair amount of development with Princess ARISTA, who decides to take matters of negotiation into her own hands, but she ends up in some really tricky situations that she is forced to try and get out of as soon as possible. She's a really plucky and interesting character, and although she is a little bit self-deprecating and she kind of does degrade herself a little bit in this book, in her head, she's actually a really cool character and she really comes into her own a lot more in this book. In the end, she does what needs to be done and she plays a vital character role in this story. Other characters that I really enjoyed, Amelia. Amelia is a new character in this book. She is the assistant to the Empress, and instantly she's a really likeable character who we really connect with. She has a really sweet nature, although she is rather kind of thrust into everything and she wasn't expecting to be in the situation she is in. But she really ensures that she makes the best of everything and she tries to make sure that the Empress is happy and content. And she's a very loving character, so I really enjoyed her. I was also really intrigued by the character of Arcadius, who we meet, and he is a magical professor. We don't really learn too much about him, but he's definitely mysterious and he's kind of involved in some plots that are going on, so definitely looking forward to seeing more of him in the next few books, I hope. He was really intense as a character, and he certainly seems to know a lot more than he lets on, which is good. The magic of this world is kind of limited up until this book, and in this book we really get to see more magic happening. We get to see the start of people discovering what magic can do, the potential that it has, and just how powerful it really can be. Overall, I would give NYPHRON Rising a 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it, and I definitely felt like the ending was intense and full of action. The story was light, it was fun, it was enjoyable, and I really loved it overall. Moving on then to the Emerald Storm, which is the second one in this bind-up. I really enjoyed this, but it was a little bit different to the third one. The third one was still in the light banter, fun sort of stage of their lives, whereas the fourth one seemed to be a little bit more serious, a little bit more kind of down to earth, and the story and the adventure that they were on had bigger consequences because of the Empire trying to take over. In the Emerald Storm we get to see a lot more of ARISTA as a character, and we see that she develops a lot in this book. She really comes into her own. She becomes a complete badass, and she's just very wonderful to see as a character. I really enjoyed her personality a lot more in this one. She really grows in confidence and she starts to take over and make her own plans and decisions, which is really cool. She has to make some tough decisions and she risks her life for people and she gets into some sticky situations, but she is in the midst of the action, and I really enjoyed seeing what happened with her storyline, and I definitely want to see what goes on next because we're left on a rather explosive cliffhanger with her, so I want to know where she's going and what's happening with her. Modena in this one is a really interesting character. She grows a lot in confidence as well, and she becomes more suited to her position. She starts to realise the potential that she has as Empress, even though she didn't want to be, and we get to see a little bit of what she could potentially do if she were to kind of gather a following. So really looking forward to seeing what happens with her personality and character in the next story, because she has the potential to muck up a lot of plans, but whether or not she will act on that or whether she will stay being a kind of facade and puppet to the Empire, I don't know, so I'm really interested in what will happen with her. Amelia was a great character in this book too. She was still just as sweet-natured and entertaining as book number 3, but in this one she does have a few moments where she's a bit overprotective and she does some things which are a little bit silly, like holding back a bit of information, but other than that I thought she was still a great character, and she does it for her own peace of mind and she wants to keep the Empress safe, so that's the only reason, and I definitely feel like she is a strong, firm friend to the Empress, and I really like her character even though she kind of holds things back a little bit. She really knows the kind of frailty of her position. She knows that she's in a very precarious situation where she was elevated to this position and it could be taken away from her at any time, and so she is a bit cautious, but I really like her overall. We get to see a little bit more of Gwen in this book, and I really love the character of Gwen. I think she's definitely one to watch because I think there's a lot more going on with her than we've really been exposed to yet, and we get to see a few elements within this book that link into her storyline, even though she's not directly in the book for most of it. I think she is one of the most intriguing characters at this point because we don't know where she's from, we don't know what potential she has, and we don't know a lot about her, but she's definitely a key player in things, so I'm really looking forward to hopefully finding out a lot more about her in book 5 and 6. Royce and Hadrian are once again exciting characters, and in this one they end up on a ship which is called the Emerald Storm, and this is where most of the plotline takes place and their adventure really kicks off. I really loved seeing them on the ship. I think that ships in books and fantasy are really cool generally, and I love knowing more about it and learning more about it. I felt like they took a little while to get into and adjusted to their life at sea, but once they did, they had some really interesting plots and intrigue that was going on the boat, and they had to try and manoeuvre their way through all of that, so I really liked seeing that. In this volume we also get to meet a new civilization which is called the TENKIN, and basically they are kind of village people and village tribes. They were not only interesting to learn about, but they had some magical elements to them which were really, really cool, and we got to see a bit about how their storylines might actually link in with the main storyline in future books. I really, really enjoyed seeing what happened in the village. A lot of very exciting things took place in that village, and that was certainly one of my more favourite bits of that book. On the whole, once again, book number 4, The Emerald Storm, was just as entertaining as the others. Really, really exciting. I loved it, and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars again. So really looking forward to seeing where the next 2 books go. We plan on reading Heir of NYPHRON in this month of February, so really excited about that, and I can't wait to see how everything ends up and ties off with them. Overall, I gave this whole bind up a 4 out of 5 stars because I gave both the books in it 4 out of 5, and I would love to know what you guys think. If you have read this book, or if you've read the previous 2 books, or if you've read the whole series, let me know all of your thoughts on this and whether you like it or dislike it. I would absolutely love to hear what you guys have to say. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all very soon in another video. Bye! Me and you gonna have a little chat about books.